Good evening and welcome to our Sundays with Soul broadcast where I am going live every Sunday evening at 6 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time to bring you inspiration, motivation, and dedication to revolutionizing the education space through ongoing support of culturally responsive teaching and leadership. I am your host, Dr. Melanie Desmond Battles, educator, lifelong learner, educational advocate, mother of two teenage daughters who are in public schools, past classroom teacher, and instructional facilitator and educational consultant through my company, Scholars for the Soul and Educational Solutions Firm. Before I dive into this week's content, we are a fairly new firm that has been doing this work of private consulting and coaching with school leaders and teachers for the last 4 years. Our goal right now is to expand our reach, and we want to normalize culturally responsive teaching and leadership in schools across the globe. And you can help us reach that goal. We are currently at 50 plus subscribers on YouTube and would appreciate your help if you would subscribe to our YouTube channel, The Culturally Responsive Education Hub. We are looking to gain 500 new subscribers over the next couple of months. We also want to reach more people on LinkedIn that can connect us with educators and leaders who are ready to join us in our mission to revolutionize education by providing culturally rich and thought-provoking instruction that centers the genius of our students, and doing this by building the confidence and competency of their teachers and their instructional leaders who support them on their professional growth journeys. You can help us by liking this video. So like it right now. And you can even repost it to your feed and use any of the hashtags culturally responsive teaching or hashtag culturally responsive leadership. We thank you. We appreciate you for following us on this journey and helping us to serve the academic and social emotional needs of our students and their teachers and adult staff. So today we are talking about how to do it with soul, integrating the soul into holistic data. You may have heard of that term before, and there is a book I recommend called Street Data. Street Data. It is a wonderful book that goes really in depth into what holistic data actually is. So let's start off by talking a little bit about what holistic data is and why you actually need your soul to be embedded into this work of holistic data. So when we talk about data, y'all, we know that's a word that a lot of people have stigmatized because we're constantly hit and inundated with the numbers. We have to consistently look at test scores. What is the attendance rate? What are the behavioral incidents or infraction rate? We're looking at all of these numbers consistently. But when we're talking about holistic data, we're not just looking at the numbers. We're humanizing the numbers by including and prioritizing the people behind the numbers. The thing about data in education is that the numbers don't just stand alone. But unfortunately, that is what we have been indoctrinated to believe. That's what we have focused on in our district meetings, in our staff meetings, in our leadership meetings, in our professional development sessions, in our professional growth sessions. We hear so much information about the numbers. And it is good for us to understand the numbers, right? This is not a conversation where we are going to minimize the importance of the numbers. But what we're missing as a whole in our education system is seeing the people behind those numbers to give us a clear and holistic perspective of how to meet the needs that are arising from the data that we're engaging with. So as culturally responsive school leaders, we understand that student voice, teacher voice, family voice, community voice, all of these voices must be a vital part of how we share power, within this system and use that power to make the best decisions to serve those we are here to serve in education. And our number one focus are the children. Our purpose is to believe and understand that everything that we're doing, when we're talking about data, when we're talking about meeting the needs and closing the gaps, it has to be centered around understanding that there are people behind these gaps. And why do I say people? People, because number one, there are people behind the numbers, right? Every number represents a student. If you're looking at it from a leadership perspective, every number represents a staff member, a family member, a community member. But the important thing to remember is that we're not just working with hard data as though we're in a factory, as though we are looking at products, right? And that's what happens often, is that we are commodifying the field of education and commodifying our students to data points. And that creates this distance between the work that we're doing and the outcomes that we want to see, which are high academic achievement rates. And we want to see our students in safe, nonviolent situations where they are learning in a peaceful and harmonious learning space. But so often, what we're focused on does not drive us to those outcomes. What we're focused on is having conversations about making the numbers go higher without actually thinking, what do I have to do to connect back to the humans who are behind these numbers? One thing I always prioritize and center when I'm doing a professional development workshop or when I'm doing a coaching session with whether it's teachers or whether it's instructional leaders, is that we have to understand the learning brain. The learning brain, whether we're talking about adult learners and you're an instructional leader in your school or your district, whether we're talking about young people's brains, the young people that are the students in the classroom, that are the students in the school building and in the district, we have to understand the brain. And one thing about the brain that I love to emphasize, and I'm going to emphasize that very shortly here, is that the brain will see the learning environment as one of two things: a threat or an opportunity. See, there's this part in the limbic region of our brain, and it's a very small part, kind of back towards the middle of the brain, after you have bypassed or succeeded through the reptilian or the oldest section of the brain that's in our brain stem, and that brings our attention and alertness to a phenomenon or to a noise or to somebody's voice, whatever that stimulant is. Once information passes through there, it now is going to hit a section of the brain called the limbic region. And in the limbic region of the brain are several different components. But what I'm going to talk about right now is the amygdala. The amygdala is a small section of the brain that has the hugest impact. Because what happens when information is taken in, it's not just the content that you are teaching. It's not just the strategies and the data that you are trying to give to your staff members. It is the emotional connection that the humans have to what you are trying to give them: the content, the information, the motivation, the skill, the will. All the things you are trying to reach them about have to come through this emotional experience. And so what happens is the brain is going to detect, whether it is through your tone of voice, whether it's through your position, and if you have a spirit of intimidation that follows you, whether it's just because you are the superintendent or it's just because you are the principal, right? It may not be that you have had a tainted past and have this bad reputation, but sometimes it's just the title that you hold. And people begin to see you as a threat, right? So maybe you're a threat to their job security. So when district people come by, we know we see the horse and pony show, the dog and pony show. That happens because people want to ensure that there is not a threat taken against their job security, which impacts their life, which impacts their well-being, which impacts their finances, which impacts so many things. And so when we're talking about the young person's brain, they're thinking about the learning environment, the classroom, the school. Is this a place where the brain is relaxed enough to take an intellectual risk? Does it see any bond? Does it have a bond with anyone else in the room, whether it's a peer, whether it's the teacher? Is oxytocin, that bonding hormone, has that been released? Is that being released to where if there is a threat, if there is a risk to learn and try something new, I'm willing to take that risk because of my bonding to the teacher, because of my bonding to my peers who I know won't humiliate me, who won't shame me, who won't degrade me, right? So when we're talking about holistic data, if we're not capturing the stories of the essence, the energy, the spirit of the learning environment, and the soul that that teacher is bringing into the space, we miss the mark. So often we're telling teachers what they need to be doing in classrooms without engaging with their soul. We're not taking in their voice to find out what are the barriers, right? The barriers typically are emotional barriers. It's typically a lack of emotional intelligence, emotional awareness, emotional resilience. And if those factors are not being cultivated within your PLCs, within your professional development sessions, within your staff meetings, or even your informal conversations where they know you are a leader who cares about their humanity, you're going to have these initiatives, you're going to have all these strategies, you're going to try these things, and you're going to get half-hearted results. Why? Because we're not centering holistic data. Holistic data takes into account several parts: the mind, the body's response, right? Your emotions, your spirit, right? All of these things are a vital part of holistic data, because when we are thinking about it in terms of our social emotional development, there are a lot of schools and districts that are putting forth these initiatives. And we're thinking primarily about the kids because that's what we're here for. We're here to educate our young people. We're here to give them exposure to opportunities so they can go out into the world and be a contributor, a positive contributor to the world. So there's nothing wrong with having that focus on the young people. But one thing about social emotional learning and the research that has been done behind this concept is that if you don't consider and center the SEL needs of the adults who are facilitating this work, you're going to miss a vital step in sustaining this work. It's not enough, y'all. District leaders, if you're listening, especially school leaders, we've wasted enough money. We've wasted enough time in our education system by bringing in these programs, bringing in these initiatives, and not considering it from a holistic perspective. It's not enough to have a program here and a program there. It's not enough to have an event here and an event there. Those things are good, but if they're done in silos and we're not thinking about the systems that govern our policies, our procedures, our practices, then we will continue to put band-aids on an issue that needs holistic care. It needs healing. It needs restoration from the core out. So if we only focus on the external issues and not think about the internal, we will miss the mark. But holistic data allows us this space where we stop, we take a moment, we connect with the adults. Adults could be family members. Adults could be the instructional leadership of that school or that district. The adults could be the teaching staff. The adults could be the paraprofessionals, everybody that's involved, because these two are human beings. And if they are not well, it's going to be very hard for them to ensure wellness for their young people, as much as they have good intentions. The mark will be missed because as humans, we will get tired. We will get burnt out. We will get to a place of frustration. We will sometimes feel isolated and go into our silo spaces where we are now not working collaboratively as a team to meet the enormous needs that our students bring into the building. We now begin to stay in our own zones. And because we stay in our own zones, we miss that opportunity to feed off of one another's brilliance, to feed off of one another's joy, to see the needs within each other and be a support system for one another that upholds the development of our students, both academically and social emotionally. So it's important because the reason why I'm talking about the soul today is for this key reason. The soul keeps us connected to our humanity. Your soul is your mind, your will, and your emotions. As a human, we all have a living soul. Every last one of us has a mind that gives us an idea of whether we're willing to do something. It reflects what we believe. It reflects our behaviors and how we go out into the world. We have our mind, we have our will, and we have our emotions. And a lot of times the data is missing what the soul needs in order to actually give us a full picture of how to meet these needs. See, we have young people who are experiencing trauma in a way that needs something more than just an instructional strategy. Excuse me. It needs something more than just you coming in and telling this child that they need to leave their issues at the door when they just left home and they're not sure what's going to be there when they get back. When they just got talked to in a very degrading way before they got out of the car, before they walked out of their home that morning to come into school, to have someone not greet them with love, to have someone not engage them and actually show care, right? And we see this in our society because people who are neglected of love and care and genuine concern tend to act out in ways that don't show love to others, that don't show concern to others, that don't show care to others nor to themselves. So when we're talking about our soul leadership, this is for my leaders especially, you got to remember that your soul is important as well. You got to be, you have to be this forerunner, this model, not perfect model, right? But this transparent model of what it means to engage in my own wellness. How are you taking time over the weekend, after work, to connect socially with your family and friends and those who build you up and pour into your cup? To be out in nature and experience what it feels like to breathe fresh air and let the sun hit your skin and feel the warmth of the sun and the coolness of the wind on nice days like today. How are you going and filling up your spiritual cup, whatever your spiritual practice is, you're getting refilled, right, on a consistent basis so that you don't make it to burnout. But see, it's hard for us to preach this teacher self-care, student self-care, and SEL development if we don't have the practice embedded within us. So this is why it's important to soul care. Take care of your own soul. Work on the things within you that call you higher. Because as you go higher, some things you have to release so that your weight is lighter, right? If you got all this baggage of past schools where you've worked and you have been traumatized by those experiences, you have been demonized in other spaces where you were just trying to help. If you keep carrying the weight of those past experiences without doing the deep work to, number one, be aware of who you have been and who you want to become, but even who you are now, and recognize that no, I'm not perfect, but I am striving. So that means, yes, I'm going to mess something up because I'm in this human body. Messing something up, not getting it right, being an imperfect and flawed human is inevitable. So in understanding that, that means I take accountability for my errors. I don't gloss them over. I don't blame other folks. I don't look to other people to validate me. I recognize, I reckon within my soul, who am I really called to be in this leadership space? Because this is a great space that you hold. But who have you been called to be? What is go back to your why. We tell the teachers to go back to their why. But what is your why? Why did you get in this leadership position within education? Because it couldn't be just for the money, while that's important, okay? But why did you get into this position? What transformation did you want to see happen? What change did you want to bring about? What impact, what legacy do you want to leave behind? So when you're no longer here in this space or on earth, when you're no longer here, what will you want people to have said about the work you've done in education? That's what you have to be reconnecting with on a consistent basis, reconnecting with your core values, reconnecting with your own humanity. Because once you have centered that practice in your life and you understand how it breathes life into the work you're doing, so that you don't get to burnout, so that you're not at sheer exhaustion. Yeah, you're tired, but you're going to get your cup filled. You're going to come back hopeful. You're going to come back ready. You're going to come back willing to do the work, right? But the reason why this matters for us and the work we're doing when we're talking about holistic data and holistic data cycles is that integrating the soul. Once you have connected with your soul, you now see how important it is to connect with the mind, the will, and the emotions of your teacher teams, of your family and community teams, and of your students. Because now you're connecting to them so you can move beyond the numbers into the deep. What things need to be dismantled in the school that are keeping some people othered and marginalized and pushed into the margins, where this consistent pattern of a lack of progress, a lack of success, a lack of moving forward and actualizing and seeing the genius of the teachers and the students shine. What is keeping that and prohibiting that? See, when you integrate your soul, you move beyond the numbers because now you're getting deep. Because the purpose of you getting deep is not just to be deep for deep's sake. It's for you to create after you've dismantled and recognize that some of the systems and policies and procedures are more harmful than they are good. They're only serving one group of people or two groups of people, but they're not serving our clients. See, we have to see this in a business aspect, not all the time, but for this conversation, think of it from a customer service perspective. Our clients are our students and families. Instructional leaders, your client is twofold, but your one-to-one client, your direct client, are your teacher teams. So now you got to ask yourself, are these policies and procedures and practices and systems and norms and routines, do they serve us more than them, which creates this chasm of an us versus them? Now you've got teacher resistance, you've got teacher cliques, you've got people refusing and rebelling against meeting the goal of advancing our young people and creating and cultivating a space for them to belong in the learning environment. But then we want to hammer down on it and think that we can drive people into being complicit and drive people into checking boxes. We're not doing the real work when we do that. We're not doing the real work. So working from your soul is going to move you to a space where you can connect to the soul of the people. But it's going to take trust building, right? We're coming to the end because we try to stay at about 30 minutes. So we're at minute 23. And so we got a few minutes left, but I want to leave you with these thoughts. I'm gonna give you a few tips before I leave. And if anything is resonating to you as I'm talking, chime off in the comments below. Let me know what are you thinking about? What is coming to mind? What are you agreeing with? What do you have questions about? Share this live with another leader, whether they're in your district or in your school staff, because we all need to get back to integrating the soul within these holistic data cycles. And I'm really, really excited because I get to do this work with the school that I'm working with now as we're finishing out this year of our year-long commitment together, and we're planning into the new year. And one of the things um, I'm going to pull up some of our data collection that we're using because I want you to see how this is actually going to look like in real life, right? I won't give you all the tea because, this is under contract, but I will let you know that we're doing work to gather the voices and data of the teacher and of the student, right? Because this is for the instructional leadership team that I'm working with. And so when we're looking at giving these surveys or facilitating these focus groups or having listening labs where we're able to come in and ask some thought-provoking questions to actually determine how good are we doing our job. See, the soul care and the soul check stuff that you got to do is going to deflate your ego. Because when our egos are so big, we don't even want to hear a lot of times how well we're doing our job. Some of us are in position where we've got a lot of yes people around us, right? Maybe you're up in the district level, or maybe you're up in your school building, and oftentimes that can be a deficit for your growth. That can stop and hinder you from actually growing, because if you've always got people telling you how well you're doing and what great things you're doing, and no one can come to you with truth, then how can you grow? Because truth is light, and every plant needs light. It brings photosynthesis. It brings the food to the plant so that it can continue to sprout and to grow, right? And so if you don't have truth, which is your light that you need to feed on in order for you to grow, then you're not connected to the essence of your soul. So I say that to say it's okay to be challenged. It's okay to have people have an eye of criticality about what we're doing, because the question should be driving us back to our core values. What are our core values, and how are the decisions that we are making aligned with core values that also align with equity? Right? We say we want equity in education, but your core values should reflect equitable practices, concepts, ways of being, cultural norms. Some of the work I did with one school, we had to go in and I had them to go and select their core values. And I selected to provide a list to them, core values that reflected equity, not just any old values that sound good, look good on paper, values that reflected equity, because that is the primary goal, is to have equity as a vehicle to achieving the things that we are looking to achieve, to close those gaps, those instructional equity gaps, right? Where some of our children are not receiving equitable instruction. Not that they need more services, they need equitable instruction that meets their needs, right? To see them shine. And so I want you to think about, how are you, because this is an action step I'm going to give you all at the end, but I want you to think about tip number one. What are the stories? What are the stories that the hard data is leaving out? This is something when I used to teach English or language arts, we used to look at perspective. And especially if we were looking at a realistic fiction text, or even just a regular fiction text, or whatever kind of text it was, fiction, nonfiction, whose story is being centered, who's got the mic, and whose story has been left out, right? So what are the stories, not the people that have been left out, because the data is going to reflect everybody. What are the stories that hard data is leaving out? What does it tell? What do we not know that's happening? So we're talking about achievement gaps, and we see that this percentage of students are not reading at the grade level that we need them to be. What has not been said about the learning environment, about the way the teacher engages, the energy that they bring into the classroom, the confidence they carry in teaching this skill, how they assess the student periodically from before, during, and after instruction, how they reteach, right? How they come in and they ignite student learning through movement, through dance, through clapping, through chants, through a provocative quote or thought, or this or that, or a riddle or a puzzle. How do they engage that reptilian brain and ignite the student's brain for learning? How do they rev up that car and get that engine going, right? How do they chunk the lesson? These are the stories that the data is leaving out, right? These are the stories that the data is leaving out. We don't know the quality, the true quality of instruction that the student is receiving. And it's not for you to find this information out in order to deem the teacher. It's for you as the instructional leader to know what journey you should be leading with this teacher. What should be some things that you help them to decide what they want to focus on, because the data is telling us this. Where do you want to go forward based on what the data, the holistic data, the voices are telling us? So one of the things that I asked the students, I'm going to look at the student voice survey. And one of the things that I have in this survey, and I use some of this from the research of Panorama, Education, which is a social emotional learning platform that provides a lot of free resources. So you can go to Panorama and they have a student voice survey where you can get questions and things like that. But one of the questions that I asked, and I want to find it to make sure. One question is, how good is this teacher at teaching in the way that you learn best? How good is this? And this is asking the student, how good is this teacher at teaching in the way you learn best? How interesting does this teacher make what you are learning in class? How clearly does the teacher present the information that you need? Here's a good one. How comfortable are you asking this teacher questions about what you are learning in class? These are things that you need to know, because while a teacher has all great intentions for teaching well, y'all stay with me a few more moments. They have all good intentions for teaching a student well. You don't know how they're receiving it until you get their information, until you get their voice, until you create a space where they can let you know that. So these are the stories that you got to be able to figure out. And this is why you got to be connected to your soul so that you can connect to the soul of your students and your teachers, right? Because another tip, another reflective thought that I want you to think about here on the screen that says, what norms and practices must I center to create space for these stories to be spoken? People are not going to reveal these all the time. Some people have been ready to tell the story. They've been waiting on you to ask the question. But it depends on who you are. See, some students may not feel safe if their teacher asks them this question, if they feel there'll be retaliation, cold shoulder, rude, offensive behavior, a backlash. There has to be a level of trust in the relationship of who's asking the question and who's giving the answer. If that trust is not there, the brain, like I talked about at the beginning, has now detected there to be a threat. And there are a couple of options with threats: fight, flight, freeze, or appease. And appease means I'm going to fawn, I'm just going to give you what I think you want. But that's not authentic. That's not going to give you the true data that you need. So you got to ask yourself, what spaces do even the teachers feel that they are safe to ask questions, to critically analyze some of the initiatives that you're bringing into the building? Or is it a be voluntold because I know what's best for the students that they're teaching all day? They're the people that are in front of these children all day long, or at least for a class period, right? Whatever it is for the grade level that you teach. But they're the ones who have a closer connection with those young people typically. And they have very little voice oftentimes when there is an initiative brought in. And we're missing golden nuggets of opportunity to find out, is this initiative, is this program, is this curriculum that we're spending millions of dollars on going to actually work? That's why I say we don't have money to keep wasting. We don't have time to keep wasting, because if we do the work to collect the right type of data from the beginning, from the onset, and then to cultivate these spaces where the stories can be spoken freely without fear of retaliation, then we know we can start to get some sustainable results. See, sometimes we want these instant results too much. And you're educating whole people, y'all. We're educating whole human beings. Quick fixes won't work. I know the algorithm has made us think that quick fixes are it. I know our attention span can't stay long. Some people have probably left this recording already because our attention spans have been shortened, because we're used to being caught on to attention within 3 seconds. And if you're not keeping it, I'm scrolling past. But quick fixes won't work in education. It's time for us to dig deep so we can really get down to the root, right? And figure out how to create a system where our roots intertwine so that what comes out is a beautiful garden of harmonious plants, not plants that harm one another, but plants that actually complement one another in a beautiful garden. Because the goal is tip 3. How can holistic data collection foster sustainability, connection, and courage? The goal is sustainability. We're not just changing things because it's going to look good for a moment. We want to create roots. We want to put down good roots, good seeds, right? Of practices of culturally responsive teaching and leadership practices that can be held on for generations. But we keep thinking we got to rewrite the book. We got to redo the cycle. It's got to be some new app, some new practice, some new program, some new curriculum. And while some may be good, what we keep missing is we keep putting on the band-aids, like I talked about earlier. And we keep missing what's needed, which is connection. A lot of human needs come from a lack of connection. And if we can get back to connecting and having the courage to call a thing, I know traditional inertia, which is a type of resistance, tells us because I've always done it this way, that's why I should be doing it. And sometimes you'll see that with teachers in your teacher teams. They won't latch on to the new because the way they've been doing it is so normal for them and comfortable for them. But until you're able to actually get down to the criticality and the examination of that practice and determine that it's not actually good for kids, it's not actually good for them. It's helped us as adults to feel better, but it's not been good for the liberation of the minds and souls of our young people to feel as though and to know that they are safe in this learning space. So these are some of the things that you have to think about. So I leave you all. Thank you for staying on with me a few minutes longer. I try to stay within 30 minutes, but I always kind of say 30-ish. So we're at 36 minutes. I'm going to close out no later than 40. Here's your action step. And I want you to comment if you're going to be willing to take this action step and implement it before the school year is out. We still have time. We're in April. Most schools are ending at the end of May, sometime in June. I want you to think about how you can take this action step and humanize one piece of data before the end of the year. You can start as low stakes as attendance data. If you notice that there are huge attendance gaps, especially in specific demographic populations, think about how you can call some of those people on the phone to collect some data. Right? We love to send out surveys electronically because it's faster, it's more efficient, but sometimes we need that human to human connection. So think about how you can get on the phone and call some of these families to actually see what's going on. How can we be more supportive? Does your baby like coming to school? Because a lot of children will worry their parents to the end. I know mine have. Oh, I got to get to school on time. We got this going on. I can't be late today, mama. I got to have this. I mean, we'll cry, we'll throw a fit, all of these things because they're excited to go. But if you got a young person who dreads going to school and they cry and they kick and they scream every day because they're being bullied, harassed, intimidated, it's boring, they're sleeping, whatever the case may be, that makes it harder. And sometimes parents get tired too. Sometimes they don't want to see their child so sad to go to a place where they should be excited. So attendance data can be a place where you start. But it's about getting the stories, having focus groups with those kids, having one-to-one conversations or a group of 3 to 5, and getting down to just a real talk conversation. Not you asserting your authority, not you coming in as though you have all the answers, but you come from a mindset of curiosity, a positionality of grace and empathy, where you really want to understand what is happening, right? Finding these things out, even giving a survey before you leave the school year to your teachers, right? One that I have, I'm going to give you another example, but one that I have is something as simple, y'all, because sometimes I think we make this thing way too complicated. Something as simple as asking them, how often do you meet as a PLC? Which means professional learning community. And then asking, do you feel that this PLC is a good use of your time? Because some teachers will tell you, sometimes it is, sometimes it's not, or absolutely no. We sit in there, we waste time. I can't use any of the information. It's not a good use of my time, and I'm only thinking about all the other things I have to do. Because if they're not invested, you're wasting time. And if we're wasting time, we're not doing what we should be doing, right? But asking them, what would you want to be improved within this PLC model? How often are you giving feedback? Is the feedback practical? Is it sustainable? Is it something that you can actually use? These are the data points, right? These are the holistic data points. And it's many, many more right? Because we can go deeper into anti-racist work and go into the criticality of how equitable your systems are. And there's so many layers, but I wanted to just come before you all today to encourage you to do it with soul. Invest in your own soul. That's number one. Care for yourself. Do your own soul checks. Realize your humanity is showing up today. You were a little more snappy than you maybe wanted to be, right? And come from a place of humility, a place of grace, because you're going to need that grace. Give the grace to yourself. And as you give it to yourself, you'll find yourself able to give out grace, give out empathy and understanding, right? It doesn't mean we accept poor behavior, but we also understand that humans are humans. And there may be more things I need to do within my teacher teams, my district teams, my leadership teams to actually help them be in a space where they can thrive. Like Bettina Love says, we want to do more than just survive. It's time to thrive, but you got to do it with soul. So thank you all so much for joining me for 40 minutes today on our Sundays with Soul. We will be back next Sunday, Lord willing, before you with another iteration of this weekly broadcast. If this has blessed you, touched your soul, or inspired, motivated you, or pushed or challenged you, please comment your responses below in the comment section. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. I am going to put it in the comments because I need your help in getting us to the 500 subscriber mark. If you're interested in learning more about us, we are scholarsforthesoul.com, or you can send me a DM or leave your information in the chat or in the comments below, and I'll be sure to reach back out with you all. Make this week a fabulous week. Love on your soul. Connect with the souls of those you work with and the young people you are privileged and blessed to serve. Have a good evening.